And you can catch our interviews with the other candidates in that primary on our website. Again, that's at nynow.org. In the meantime, the three Democrats running for lieutenant governor faced off in their own debate this week as well. Those are newly appointed Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado, former New York City Council member Diana Reyna, and progressive advocate Ana Maria Archila. And the debate had some tense moments.
Ana Maria continues to point the finger at what is special interest, but she has a special interest. Working Families has endorsed her.
Should Governor Hochul sign the bill?
I think she should give it some serious thought, for sure.
Well, I mean, it's on her desk.
I know, and I think she's in the process now of giving it some serious thought.
My two opponents do not have the experience of actually being the people who are trying to make Albany work for working families.
Now, the last person you heard there is Archila. She's a progressive activist who spent years organizing for causes like protections for tenants and immigrants' rights. Archila joined us this week with more on her campaign and her vision for the LG's office. Ana Maria, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan, for inviting me.
Of course, anytime. So you are new to our audience. I want to give you a chance to explain who you are. Give me some sense of what your background and your experience is.
Yes, so my name is Ana Maria Archila. I'm a candidate for lieutenant governor. I am a mother. I am an immigrant. I am a queer Latina. I came to this country when I was 17 years old, and it was in New York that I found a place that welcomed me and allowed me to feel at home again. It was also in New York where I found the safety to be queer and to love who I love. And it's in New York where I spent the last 20 years building organizations that are rooted in working class communities and immigrant communities, and organizations that are dedicated to raising the voices of people who are often forgotten by our government, and making sure that tenants and workers and young people and parents are respected in our democracy, are taken seriously. And now I'm running for lieutenant governor to make sure that the state government actually prioritizes the needs of working families above the whims and the demands of the real estate industry and billionaires. New Yorkers are facing really tremendous crisis in the cost of rent, the cost of food and gas, utilities, and our state government could do so much if it chose to actually alleviate the pressures that people are facing instead of always accepting the demands of the real estate industry and billionaires like the owner of the Buffalo Bills.
So let's talk about that. What do you do with that? I guess the big overarching issue for New Yorkers is that it costs too much to live here, things cost too much, rent costs too much. It's just unsustainable for a lot of people. What do you do about that if you are elected as lieutenant governor?
Well, New York is one of the richest states in the country. So our problem is not that we lack resources. Our problem is that we choose to not use the levers of government to address the needs that people are facing. We are simply allowing billionaires to make demands, like say, I want a stadium in Buffalo right now, and to ask taxpayers to pay for it. We could, instead of giving $850 million to a stadium in Buffalo, we could put $850 million for access to food, access to affordable housing, support for small businesses in the city of Buffalo, where 50% of the children live in poverty. So you asked me what I would do. I would insist that as lieutenant governor, I would not be quietly just smiling in the pictures in the background. I would be lifting up my voice every single day to say, we need to tackle the housing affordability crisis. We need to put in place protections for tenants from evictions. We need to put in place rents so that landlords cannot raise the rents in disproportionate ways. We need to put in place actually use the public funds that we give to corporations to the building of permanently affordable housing. These are just three things that the state of New York could do that would make a huge difference in the lives of New Yorkers. And the governor chose not to do them in her first budget and her first legislative season. Her lieutenant governor said nothing. They were just quiet, smiling in the background. And that is an unacceptable way of governing in a moment when people are suffering.
It's an interesting role of the lieutenant governor. We've had past lieutenant governors, like as you said, who really take themselves into the background and don't become active on a lot of issues and kind of just wait on the sidelines. So you don't see yourself as being that kind of lieutenant governor, I'm assuming. How would you see yourself in that office if you disagreed with whoever was governor or whoever's in the legislature?
So the lieutenant governors have traditionally been, that role has been embodied as a representative of the governor in ribbon cutting ceremonies. And I think that's a misunderstanding of the office. First, because it's not an appointed office. It is an office that's directly elected by the people, and therefore its mandate and its power derives from the people, not from the governor. So I think lieutenant governors should not stay quiet when the governor makes a decision like sending patients who are positive with COVID back into nursing homes. That decision by Governor Cuomo resulted in the deaths of thousands of New Yorkers. And the lieutenant governor said nothing. The lieutenant governor should speak up every single day and lift up the priorities of people whose voices get drowned out in Albany by the industries that dominate the conversation with their lobbyists and with their donations to campaigns. The real estate industry, the private healthcare industry, the agricultural industry, crypto billionaires. They buy influence by donating heavily to campaigns, and then they, during budget season and legislative season, their priorities are at the top of the list, and everybody else's voices get drowned out. And that is not, we don't have to accept that. We simply don't have to accept that. And the lieutenant governor should be an ally to people who need Albany to deliver for working families. And the lieutenant governor could be also a partner to the governor in actually driving an agenda that addresses the needs of New Yorkers all up and down the state.
I want to ask you about an issue that you touched on. It's cryptocurrency. So there's a bill that the governor is considering that the legislature passed that would put a 2-year moratorium on something called crypto mining. It's basically getting Bitcoin by operating computers, and it uses a lot of energy, which has brought up a lot of environmental concerns. So I know that you are, I want to clarify your position on that. So you are in support of that bill. Do you think it goes far enough?
The bill is a very modest bill that says, let's just put a moratorium on crypto mining so that we can study the environmental impact and understand, make like a more concerted decision about how to relate to this emerging industry. I met with people in the Finger Lakes region who are directly impacted by crypto mining because some of the power plants, the fossil fuel power plants in that region have been reactivated because at the request essentially of the crypto mining industry. And they're polluting the air, polluting the water, creating a lot of sound pollution as well in one of the most beautiful regions of the state of New York. So the governor's choice to simply delay the signing of the moratorium, which is a modest piece of legislation, is actually an indication that she's not willing to act with urgency to tackle climate. And it's also an indication that she's listening to the donors that gave her $100,000 to her campaign and the donors of her lieutenant governor who poured $1 million in an independent expenditure to essentially advertise on behalf of Antonio Delgado. You started asking me, do I support the bill? I support the bill. I also think that we need to take bold action on all the different fronts of climate change. And the governor, for example, refused to support the renewable power legislation that would have gotten us on a path to build renewable sources of energy for the state of New York, which is primarily powered by fossil fuels. And it would also get us on a path to control the utilities so that we're not at the mercy of utility companies that keep hiking up the cost of electricity because that's what they do. It is for profit. And we could actually control it and make it more democratically sort of responsive to people.
All right, Ana Maria Archila, a Democrat on the ballot running for lieutenant governor in the June 28th primary. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan, so much.